Hi, this is Steve Schiffman. I want to thank you for joining me today in this particular webinar podcast that we try to put out every single day to help you as a salesperson be more effective. And if you're a manager, to be more effective in managing. Remember, I believe truly that most managers are enforcers of what management wants. That is, make 100 calls a day. But they're not necessarily the teachers. And I would urge you, if you're a manager, to learn the skills necessary to teach. That is, how do you teach and how do you get the response that you need from sales representatives? Sales representatives, on the other hand, should have their own individual responsibility to do their job correctly. That is, you as a sales representative should in fact get the books necessary, get the training necessary, even after you have to pay for it by yourself to learn how to be good at what you do. After all, this is how you make your living. So I would urge you to do that. And by the way, and I've told you this before, if you want some help or you just want to talk about something, it's free. All you have to do is send me an email, schiffman@steveschiffman.com. Take it off the website, go online to Google, and write me a simple note that says, I'd like to participate. And I will give you a free 20-minute lesson, if you want to call it that, on how to be more effective in cold calling and sales, handling objections, whatever it is you're interested in doing. Don't forget that. You can reach out to me anytime, and I will be glad to help you. So, having said that, by the way, LinkedIn too. By the way, having said that, today I want to talk to you about being overly optimistic. You know that I work with a number of different companies during the course of the week. And I go see them or I talk to them on the phone and I ask them about what they're doing. I have two particular companies that I want to talk to you about today. One company I started working with and they said to me, well, you know, it's really all about quotes. Now, I get that from a lot of companies, that they don't really sell it that moment. What they do is they put out a quote and they see whether or not the person's interested. So they could put out 150 quotes before they get one sale. But this particular person said to me, well, Steve, I can't do more quotes. I don't want to get more quotes out because we're going to be inundated with business. Now, they haven't made a sale yet, but they're going to be inundated with business. I have another company that I'm working with right now that said the same thing, and they're about broke. They've spent a lot of money in what they're trying to do, and it didn't pan out for them. They were too optimistic. So here's the message to you today, and that's not to be too optimistic. I don't want you to be negative. Believe me, that's the last thing I want is for you to be negative about what you're doing. But I want you to be realistic about what you're doing. And there are two major objectives or thinkings in that period. The first is, do you have a next step? The fact that you're quoting, the fact, and I do a lot of business with companies that quote, the fact that you're quoting something doesn't mean it has a next step. It just means they want to quote. The quote should lead to a next step. That's really important. So one of the key elements of selling is there a next step? And I ask that of every single salesperson I deal with, is there a next step? If there's not a next step, there probably isn't anything. The second thing that I want you to consider, if there's a next step, when is that going to happen? For example, the longer the sale takes out of its normal sales cycle, the less likely it is to happen. Listen to this again. The longer the sale takes out of its normal sales cycle, the less likely it is to happen. So you can have a sales cycle that takes a year. I wouldn't debate that. If you said, well, this takes a year to put together, I'm not going to debate that. But is it the normal sales cycle? If you tell me, well, this is the odd one out, then don't play with it. Don't get involved in it. It's probably not going to happen. You've got to look at everything and say, is this the normal sales cycle? And you have to know what that is. So there are steps, right? You've got to have steps. And if I were you, I'd qualify my steps really tight. I wouldn't put anything in a first step if it isn't a real first step. That is, it doesn't have a next meeting. The next meeting determines if your first meeting went well. How do you know your sale went well? You know your sale went well, sales meeting went well, if you walked out with a sale. That's the ultimate. But that doesn't always happen. So what is it that you're looking for? When I meet somebody for the first time, I'm looking for a next step. It's the only thing I'm looking for. Can I get back in? And what does it take to get back in? What do I have to do to get back in? Do I have to give up everything? Do I have to talk fee? Do I have to talk about what I'm going to do? See, a proposal isn't necessarily a next step, because you and I both know sometimes people say, well, send me a proposal, I'll look at it. It's like a quote. You've got to say to yourself, the next step has to have some validity and has to actually be something. In other words, what are you going to accomplish in that next step? So when you look at your prospects today, which I would urge you to do, I would like you to take a look at them and say, okay, these are the people that I've met with recently. Use recently as a time frame. These are the people who recently I've set up the next meeting with. Doesn't matter to me when it is, but I've set up the next meeting and have a real meeting with a live and breathing person on this date that's in reasonable shape. Not you just going back for the sake of going back. No, you have a reasonable belief that this is going to happen. So you're going back on a reasonable period of time to meet with a reasonable live breathing person to talk about what you discussed in the first meeting. Now, here's the problem. If you haven't talked to that person in 6, 7, 8, 9, 12 months, it's all over again. You got to start from the beginning. And too many salespeople do that. Too many salespeople say to me, well, Steve, I met with this guy in January of last year. I'm going back in January this year, but I haven't met with him. You're starting all over again. You're starting all over again. I don't care what you think, but you're starting all over again. You don't have anything at this point. You have to be careful about that. You might have had a great meeting, whatever that means to you, a great meeting. Most great meetings, by the way, are the person was nice. Oh, I had a great meeting with like that. Yeah, I know you did, because the person was nice to you. It doesn't mean that it was a valid first meeting. It was a discussion. And maybe the person saw you because they were interested in what you had to say, or they just saw you because you persisted. How many times have you called somebody? 44 times, and you finally got the appointment, and you said, boy, are they interested? So I want you to give some thought to this. Again, there are steps and time. Those are the two things that you have to consider when you're selling. Important things to consider today. Start today thinking about this. What do you have? What's dead? And it's okay. It's okay to say, you know what? This isn't going to happen. Anyway, if you need some help, don't hesitate to reach out to me. You can reach out a variety of ways, website, go through Google, whatever you want to do, doesn't matter. Get one of my books. I'll tell you too how to reach out to me. But reach out, it's free. It's a free 20-minute piece that I will give you. No cost, no obligation, no hard sell. Anyway, this is Steve Schiffman. I want to thank you very much for joining me today. And as always, you humble me by your attendance.